Hi guys, it's me Quinn, and as always, if you appreciate my content, consider hitting the like button. It's the only way the YouTube algorithm really notices me.
So there's going to be a lot of speculation in this video because this really is such a hypothetical. What if Jessica had never disobeyed the Bene Gesserit Sisterhood? Now, Jessica was bred by the Sisterhood and trained by Reverend Mother Gaius Helen Mohiam herself. She was Gaius Helen Mohiam's best student, and the Sisterhood had really high hopes for her, so high in fact that she was tasked with one of their most important missions. She was supposed to give birth to the mother of the Kwisatz Haderach. So when the Bene Gesserit played their matchmaking game and made it so that the Duke Leto would choose the Lady Jessica as his concubine, they had given her the task of only bearing daughters to the Duke Leto. Now, what the Bene Gesserit didn't count on is that Jessica would actually fall in love with the Duke Leto and give him the son that he wanted, instead of the daughter that the Bene Gesserit had told her to create. Now this of course completely threw off the Bene Gesserit plan. Jessica trained her son in the Bene Gesserit way, and he had the powers of Kwisatz Haderach, but without Bene Gesserit conditioning per se. He had all of these outside influences. But what if Jessica had obeyed the Sisterhood? What if Jessica had only given daughters to the Duke Leto? Now, I don't have any doubt in my mind that Leto would have accepted the fact that his daughter was the heir to House Atreides. Though the Dune universe does have certain feudalistic elements, inheritance isn't patriarchal. Princess Irulan, for instance, is heir to the Lion Throne of House Carino. So Jessica's daughter would have been accepted as the future of House Atreides, and probably trained in a similar way as Paul. It's also likely that the events in which led the Emperor to giving House Atreides the fiefdom of Arrakis would have still occurred, because nothing about Paul being a girl would have prevented the Atreides soldiers from becoming more and more skilled, or have prevented House Atreides from becoming popular within the Lanzarad. So the plot against House Atreides might have still happened. Now, this is where the Bene Gesserit Sisterhood come back into the picture. The Bene Gesserit Sisterhood had always intended to marry an Atreides daughter to a Harkonnen son. The Bene Gesserit have great influence over the great houses of the Lanzarad, and they've been the matchmakers of the Imperium for countless generations. I think it's likely that the Bene Gesserit Sisterhood would have stepped in at this point, gone to House Atreides and House Harkonnen, and suggested a marriage. A marriage between Thade Ratha of House Harkonnen and the Atreides' daughter heir. Not only would this be an end to the feud, also House Harkonnen by marriage would still eventually inherit Arrakis. But this would be after House Harkonnen would be inherently changed by the influence of the Atreides joining, of course, and not to mention the Bene Gesserit. Now, the joining of the Harkonnen son to the Atreides daughter would have resulted in the Kwisatz Haderach, and the difference here would be the Bene Gesserit know about this Kwisatz Haderach. They are perfectly aware of its birth, and so they are able to observe and influence at every part of the process of this child's development. And we see this behavior in the Bene Gesserit Sisterhood in the later books with special children. If they didn't in fact remove the child from its parents and raise it themselves under strict Bene Gesserit conditioning and training, they would monitor and check up constantly with all sorts of Bene Gesserit spies. The result, theoretically, would be someone who is fully under Bene Gesserit control, who fully buys into the Bene Gesserit Sisterhood, and is compelled to do their bidding as Paul never was. Now, what would happen next relates to one of the key ways in which the Bene Gesserit have always operated, and that is through religious manipulation. Now, one of the purposes of the Sisterhood's Missionara Protectiva was to prepare the human universe for the coming of the Kwisatz Haderach. The Missionara Protectiva was, of course, the Sisterhood's protocols for religious seeding. It's how they created legends and myths on different planets across the human universe. It's how they created the myths and legends about the Mahdi and the Lisan al-Gaib on Arrakis to prepare for the coming of the Kwisatz Haderach. So they probably would have been very careful in how they introduced the Kwisatz Haderach to the human universe. They probably wouldn't have done it all at once. It would have been a subtle, gradual process, but one that ultimately would have likely played on human psychology in ways to kind of steer them away from likely a lot of the fanatical thinking which led to Paul's jihad. This is akin to how in Arthur C. Clarke's Childhood's End, the overlords, the seemingly benevolent aliens who have invaded Earth, reveal themselves at a time and in a manner that doesn't freak everyone out and allows people to kind of accept things a bit easier. And I believe the Bene Gesserit would have done things in a similar way. So once the Kwisatz Haderach was revealed to the human empire, he would now be able to look to the future and look to the past to determine the best way forward for humanity, to determine the best path for humanity's comfortable and indefinite survival. And he would use his influence over the people of the Imperium to get them on board. Now, all of this assuming that nothing else goes wrong in the Bene Gesserit plan. For one, though the Missionara Protectiva does work, the Bene Gesserit don't have total control of it. So it could still get out of hand and become something fanatical. And also, we have no idea if the Bene Gesserit actually could have controlled any Kwisatz Haderach. A being powerful enough to look into the past and look into the future and become the fulcrum by which the fate of the human universe turns upon, kind of seems like someone that just kind of does what he wants to do. The Bene Gesserit have an awful lot of confidence in their conditioning to think that they'd be able to control this person, especially considering that their Bene Gesserit conditioning failed with the Lady Jessica, leading to all of their problems in the first place. It is also likely that a Kwisatz Haderach would have also recognized the human potential to invent catastrophe, as Leto II recognized. He would have likely realized the flaw in the Bene Gesserit design, as Leto did, and saw the necessity for a golden path to put a check on the potential destructive capabilities of Ixian invention. I go into this more on my video on Kralazak. So essentially, to wrap things up, if Jessica had obeyed the Sisterhood, it probably would have still gone wrong for them. They likely would not have been able to control any Kwisatz Haderach, and that's ultimately what the Sisterhood realizes later on in the books. They accept the fact that making a Kwisatz Haderach in the first place was a mistake. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe for more Quids ideas. Peace out.